I just called up Minister's aide. He just said he'll be here in a minute. So he should be joining us. And then once Sir is here, then Sir is also come.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. So I think, should we start right now?
So do you start there? Start with the ground rules and we'll be ready.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yeah. Okay. So thank you all for joining us today. Before we formally begin the session, I just wanted to take a couple of minutes to share a little bit about Moneylife Foundation. So as I'm sure you're all aware, we are a 10-year-old nonprofit, and our primary goal is to spread financial literacy and to bring awareness to people about the rights that they are rightfully entitled to. So before we begin, there are a few ground rules that I wanted to share with all of you. One is we've kept all of you on mute during the course of this session, and that is so that there is no other disturbance to anyone else. And this is also because we can concentrate only on the speakers for the day. Also, for optimal viewing, I'm going to request if all of you could keep your screens on the speaker view. Please note, this entire meeting is being recorded, and a copy of this will be uploaded on a YouTube channel, so you can watch that again. The name of the YouTube channel is Moneylife TV. Also, during the Q&A, if you have any questions, my request would be to please use the raise hand button option that is available on Cisco. So then we know whom to unmute. Also, please note your homes and backgrounds are visible. The request would be to please keep your cameras switched off. So now I think without taking too much of your time, can I now request Sucheta Dalal, Madam, our founder trustee, to please take over. Ma'am, over to you. Ma'am, you have to unmute yourself, ma'am.
Good evening and a warm welcome to all of you at the release of Moneylife Foundation's report on efficacy of RERA from the perspective of a consumer. We're most honored and happy to have with us Mr. Hardeep Singh Puri, Minister of State for Housing and Urban Affairs, Civil Aviation, and Minister of State for Commerce and Industry to release this report today. It's also our privilege to have Mr. Deepak Parekh, Chairman of HDFC, and Mr. Gautam Chatterjee, Chairman RERA, to share their views. Thank you, sirs, for so kindly accepting our invitation. A very special thanks to our realty industry leaders, lawyers, regulators, activists who helped us in our research. Thank you, Moneylife members and consumers, for your gracious presence. In the 1980s, it was the vision of one man, H.D. Parekh, which made it possible for middle-class Indians to own a home. HDFC created India's mortgage industry, but the real estate sector remained largely unregulated, inflicting a lot of pain on home buyers. All of us know many painful stories of delayed deliveries, escalated costs, and legal tangles that killed the dreams of tens of thousands of people. Decades later, the Real Estate Regulation Act of 2017 was a big game changer that has made the purchase of homes and property a lot safer and has finally given us a separate grievance redress mechanism. I'm delighted that all our three speakers today have had a big role to play in these crucial developments. They've also been key to Moneylife Foundation's work in the form of 3 key reports on this sector, all supported by HDFC. Our first report on retirement homes looked at the need for guidelines to make them safe for senior citizens who want to spend their retirement with people who are also availing a host of support services. Mr. Parekh actually offered great help in our work, and it was Mr. Puri's phenomenal support that led to his ministry issuing formal central guidelines on retirement in 2019. As of course, is to get states to adopt these guidelines. Our second study was on reverse mortgage. It allows cash-strapped senior citizens to draw down the value of their home while continuing to live in it till the end of their lives. Reverse mortgage products offered today are unattractive, and our report has suggested what needs to be done. Mr. Puri again was kind enough to release this report in February 2019. Our latest report on the efficacy of RERA regulations from the to give a voice to the industry's biggest stakeholders, which is really the customers. The report has been extensively researched and put together mainly by my colleague Maya, and we are also extremely grateful for the support and inputs we received from industry leaders and Mr. Nagendra Goel for his help. Devashish Basu, trustee of Moneylife Foundation, will now share key highlights of this report in just a few slides. Over to you, Devashish.
Sorry. Good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for being here today. I have just 5 slides which will give you a glimpse of the work that we have done in this report. I start by thanking all those who have very graciously and generously shared their time and information with Maya. They range from officials to researchers to activists and real estate experts. The Real Estate Regulation Act has been changing legislation that has imposed discipline, transparency, and accountability on developers and intermediaries. All projects of a certain size are now compulsorily registered. Buyers are empowered with all the information they need about the property that they plan to buy. The Act has forced developers to have clear timelines on implementation or face consequences for failure to deliver. RERA provides an excellent and inexpensive grievance redress system as well for buyers, which just did not exist earlier. As a result, complaints of home buyers have declined. Here is the implementation status of RERA. As you can see, it is taking time. The Act is new and things move slowly in India, but all states are slowly falling in line. Almost 60,000 projects are now registered with RERA and over 45,000 intermediaries. Nearly 60,000 complaints have been disposed of. But RERA is a new law, as we know, and there are challenges. While our work documents great strides made by states in a short period of time, adoption and implementation is uneven because different states react differently or act differently. West Bengal stands out like a sore thumb, having enacted its own law, which is challenged by the Supreme Court. We have learned that model agreements for sale are not being enforced or implemented or followed in letter and spirit. Developers continue to have their own versions of model agreements, which could be sometimes one-sided. Also, activists fear that escrow accounts that builders have to set up for projects can be misused. Several types of projects are outside RERA, which is an issue in a state like Maharashtra. I now move on to my last slide, which is the sort of recommendations that we have submitted. Our report has offered 20 recommendations across the sector, across a wide variety of issues. I will highlight only a few, addressing some of the more important challenges that RERA is facing. One is enforcing model agreements, as I mentioned. This is a must for standardization that RERA has promised. We need to improve the execution of RERA orders as well. This is another crucial step to establish the authority of RERA under the law. Standardized stamp duty calculations for carpet area. This would really help customers. That apart, if minimum quality standards can be set as part of project delivery, that would help consumers. Among the most important issues we have come across is the need to incorporate the decision of RERA in bankruptcy resolutions, because these are the two things that are happening parallelly, because when a lot of projects are going bankrupt. This would help save some projects and customers as well. Finally, our recommendation is to have a centralized database of information. We all keep hearing data is the new oil. If we can have a centralized database set up with the ministry's help, policymakers, researchers, and consumers all will benefit immensely from the mountains of very rich actual live data that is currently being generated. That's where I now request to step in and take the event forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Devashish. Let's now move on to Mr. Deepak. Deepak Parekh, anyone has anything to do with owning a home or property in India. All of you already know that he's the person and government advice, not just on real estate, but capital markets, power, aviation, and so many other things. You also know about the innumerable awards and honors that have been conferred on him, including the Padma Bhushan. Let's just say that he had really big shoes to fill when he took over from Mr. H.D. Parekh. and he commands the same respect and standing today. So without further ado and an elaborate introduction, may we request him to say what he thinks about the Act. And I must tell you that we also seek his guidance on several issues from time to time. Over to you, Mr. Parekh.
Thank you, Suchita. Honorable Minister Shri Hardeep Singh Puri, Gautam Chatterjee, Suchita, Debashish, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon and thank you for inviting me here today. At the outset, I would like to congratulate the team at Moneylife Foundation for their very lucid and detailed report on RERA under the leadership of Suchita and Debashish. Rarely does one see such in-depth research on real estate in India. And this is primarily because access to such information is always piecemeal. One definitely has to appreciate the effort, as these findings will go a long way in highlighting what needs to be done further to strengthen the various aspects of RERA. As you see, Debashish has listed out the recommendations which we have to work on now. The report is also akin to a first phase independent assessment of RERA's progress so far across the country. One hopes that states will be proactive in trying to address specific issues raised in the report and implement the recommendations as they deem fit. In 2017, RERA was initially perceived as a disruptor and viewed with skepticism. Home buyers' confidence was at very low, whilst developers felt shortchanged, as this meant a radical change in the way they would now have to manage their cash flows. Yet, it was the single-minded determination of the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, coupled with a great deal of moral suasion by the Honorable Housing Minister, that got states to gradually adopt RERA. Personally, I must admit that the moment I heard that Gautam Chatterjee's name was being proposed for chairperson of Maharashtra RERA, I did feel a sense of relief. I knew there were going to be some challenges up ahead in the initial phase, but I was confident that this would get ironed out given Gautam's immense competence, decisiveness, but most importantly, his willingness to listen to all concerned. It must have taken a lot of patience, but the results are here for all to see. Gautam, you have set the benchmark high and have rendered human service to the state. We will certainly miss you when you leave the chair. While Maharashtra RERA has been recognized for being at the forefront, and this is reflected in the fact that the largest number of projects registered in states like Maharashtra. However, states like Gujarat, MP, UP, Karnataka are amongst other states who have also measured up well. As real estate is a state subject, there may not always be uniformity in implementation as desired. But 3.5 years now down the line, it is evident that states which have taken the role of RERA seriously and not diluted key provisions have seen their housing markets perform far, far better than RERA laggard states. The report has rightly highlighted the importance of having full-time regulatory authorities and not just having make-do interim regulators. Another critical aspect is the need to have more permanent and dedicated appellate tribunals. Transparency, disclosures, and a high regard for ethics remain the starting point of minimizing conflict. Given how clogged our courts have been with pending cases, India needs to have more mechanisms to enable it to be less litigious, especially for home buyers, many of whom are first-time home buyers. It is devastating to have funds locked up in long, drawn-out litigations. The efficacy of the redressal mechanism essentially tests the strength of each state RERA. To my mind, it is imperative that the state RERA is perceived to be fair in its dealings. The objective of RERA is to ensure that all stakeholders play by the rules. It is given that RERA's key role is to pull up developers who do not adhere to their commitments and penalize them where there is a genuine aggrieved home buyer. Yet, I have been equally surprised to note that there have been various instances where the home buyer has been made to pay a penalty to a developer for deliberately delaying contracted payments. This is rather reassuring, as it is good to know that RERA penalizes not only, it's not just one-sided. In short, RERA is taking care of the entire housing ecosystem. This is a huge confidence booster and will bring in the much needed discipline amongst all parties concerned. I think there is a lot of work still left to be done, especially in terms of streamlining legal aspects as highlighted in the report. But I'm confident that RERA will get stronger in the days to come. At the same time, it is important that all players ensure that they raise the bar on their code of ethics. I just want to take this opportunity to reiterate that I remain extremely confident of the housing sector in India. Much of this has to do with the government that has prioritized housing on its agenda, recognizing the important role that it plays in the economy. So whether it is the extension of project completion deadlines under RERA, whether it is extending the cash-linked subsidy scheme for middle-income, low-end middle-income home buyers, whether it is relaxing tax rules to allow sale of homes valued up to 2 crores at a 20% discount to the circle rate, and finally, states like Maharashtra has provided a short window of reduced stamp duty rates. These measures have helped the housing markets to recover. Needless to add, in all my over 42 years of working in the housing sector, I have never seen interest rates at such low levels, which, along with the fiscal incentives, has made housing so much more affordable today. I don't believe the spurt of housing demand in the last few months, what we have seen is a pent-up demand. The aspirations to own a home is inherent in every household. And all of us here are mindful that the country still faces an immense shortage of quality and affordable housing in the country. Yet this goes to show that with supportive government policies, adequate available of resources, and supply of rightly priced homes, the demand for home loans will continue unabated. Finally, for instance, let me end by saying the reductions in stamp duty charges in Maharashtra eventually saw a 3-time increase in the registrations for the month of December compared to the corresponding month in the previous year. So contrary to initial fears, revenues in the state have increased due to higher volume. There's a huge positive in a year that saw complete devastation. This re-emphasizes the importance of building a property-owning democracy. So I do believe that we are fortunate to have a housing minister who has consistently delivered and has stayed focused on finding housing solutions across all segments. The next thrust, I know Moneylife Foundation has done on reverse mortgage, but the next thrust is going to be on rental housing. And here again, the minister has already laid out the plan and guidelines for the same. Suchita, we have to now work on rental housing as your next report. How to make rental housing become popular. India is not yet out of the woods as far as the pandemic is concerned. And there are pockets of pain across various sectors of the economy. This is why I remain a strong believer in a construction-led recovery for the Indian economy. As India builds, India will grow. Thank you for giving me an opportunity. Next report.
Research from the consumer perspective. I keep saying our work is important. Next report, yes. And our work is important. We are the only ones backing for the largest stakeholder, because we the consumers. And as long as we have Mr. Puri over there, I think we can make a difference. I now invite Mr. Gautam Chatterjee, Chairman of MahaRERA, to share his views. Mr. Chatterjee, former Additional Chief Secretary of Maharashtra, has done for MahaRERA what G.V. Ramakrishna did for the Securities and Exchange Board of India in the 90s. He is feared and respected and has signaled to industry that he means business. He has worked relentlessly to explain the Act to people, listened closely to consumer activists and intermediaries, and is ever willing to innovate and find ways to make things work. His tenure has seen several progressive and consumer-friendly orders, and as Mr. Parekh pointed out, they have been even-handed. So consumers who have been trying dealing tactics have also got penalized. The inexpensive conciliation mechanism that he has introduced, again, talking to consumer activists for dispute resolution, has been highly successful. It's no wonder that Mr. Puri once referred to him as a rock star who has ensured that MahaRERA in Maharashtra has shown the way, and other states have had no option but to follow in his footsteps. Over to you, Mr. Chatterjee.
Thank you so much, Sucheta ji. Respected Mantri ji, Sucheta ji, Debashish Dada, Moneylife Foundation, the HDFC team, industry stalwarts, and all participant stakeholders of the real estate fraternity. I really feel honored to be given this opportunity to share my perspective on MahaRERA, especially in the context of a very well-researched Moneylife Foundation HDFC report. The Act, the RERA Act, is indeed a landmark legislation which ushered in a paradigm shift in the real estate sector by bringing in greater efficiency, greater transparency, accountability among stakeholders, and financial discipline. And of course, with an emphasis on consumer centricity. The quasi-judicial regulatory authorities will undoubtedly facilitate development of this very important sector, the real estate sector. And I firmly believe that the said development, the development of the real estate industry, will happen when projects which are registered with various authorities get completed in a time-bound manner, while the regulatory mechanism ensures transparency through mandatory disclosures in the public domain, enforces financial discipline, and of course builds trust between stakeholders, because that is at an all-time low, and that needs deficit while we are redressing grievances. Even the Honorable Bombay High Court, while establishing the constitutionality of the Act in the Nilkamal Realtors versus Union of India, had observed in para 115 of its order that the object and purpose of RERA Act is to complete the development work in the project within the stipulated time frame. RERA, right from day one, has sincerely tried to implement the Act in letter and spirit, keeping completion of project and enabling buyers to get possession of their complete as the primary. I feel proud that MahaRERA has also many firsts to its credit, establishing a cent% digital platform, creating the conciliation forum, ensuring quality in workmanship by introducing a mandatory Form 2A quality certification by project engineers, and taking up skill training for workmen, making membership of MahaRERA registered self-regulatory organizations, SROs, mandatory for promoters to bring in more professionalism in the promoters. I am glad that MahaRERA, the only RERA in the country with an ISO 9001 certification, has been able to empower prospective home buyers to make informed choices while deciding on their home purchase. The report card, the report which is presented by today and will be launched by the Honorable Minister, records the MahaRERA's performance as in February 2020. Today, as we speak, MahaRERA has 27,700 registered projects, 27,000 registered agents, and 13,000 complaints filed, of which 8,900 decided. However, this pendency of over 4,000 complaints is certainly disconcerting. And therefore, MAHARERA has decided to further activate the conciliation forum to first attempt resolution of these pending complaints through the conciliation process. Analysis of the data of these complaints that are pending and the complaints that have been filed shows a very interesting 94% of the complaints filed pertaining to pre-RERA ongoing projects. The worrying thing, of course, is that only 50% of these pre-RERA ongoing projects have been completed till date. We will have to continue dealing with the legacy issue of the pre-RERA era. The pain of transition, it seems, will last much longer than what was initially expected. Thanks to the pragmatic decision of reduction of the stamp duty by the government of Maharashtra, which resulted in a quantum jump in sales registration. I believe it was 2.5 lakh sale registrations across Maharashtra. MAHARERA too has in the last quarter seen registrations go up tremendously. It has registered around 1,200 new projects, which even exceeds launches in the corresponding period of the last year. The sector seems to be coming back on track. Last year has been a very difficult year for the real estate sector, both from the consumer and the promoter's perspective. Though I must admit that the challenge posed by COVID-19 helped MAHARERA expedite the expansion of its digital footprint to cover the whole gamut of quasi-judicial complaints management on an online mode. Namely, we already had an online filing. We went on to make uploading of written replies, rejoinders, affidavits, and all other documents to be filed online monthly cause lists to be shown, virtual hearings to take place, online roznamas to be uploaded, and digitally signed orders to be issued after the decision is taken, taking a step further towards making MAHARERA's vision of a zero footfall and a paperless office come true. After a brief 3 months disruption, MAHARERA, through its virtual hearings, has been able to adjudicate close to 1,100 cases in the last 6 months. The set of 20 recommendations made in the report are really very apt, mainly the ones that are related to orders passed by authorities and their adjudicating officers, enhanced disclosures, empowering RERA authorities to issue directions to all stakeholders, strengthening the Act provisions to enable completion of stalled projects mainly, single window clearances by competent authorities, ensuring quality standards, creating a central repository of data, and the RERA perspective in the IBC. I'm sure the concerned authorities will act upon them. As we completed 3 years of implementation of this Act, the majority of the RERA authorities got together and established the All India Forum for RERA, I4RERA, of RERAs to undertake initiatives for furthering of RERA across the country, together solving the common issues and discussing the best practices. I4RERA, through a consultative process, also deliberated upon necessary amendments required in this Act. And incidentally, the I4RERA recommendations on amendments needed are similar to the recommendations that have been made in this report. In conclusion, let me call upon all the stakeholders to work towards enabling RERA to create a healthy and a robust real estate sector across the country. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chatterjee. Those were really, really important points. And coming from the first MAHARERA chairman, absolutely things that need to be implemented. I'm absolutely delighted now to come to the main part of the program, which is to introduce Mr. Hardeep Singh Puri and to have him release the report. In fact, Mr. Puri is anything but a typical politician, and that's because he's not a politician. He's a highly successful career diplomat from the Indian Foreign Service, prolific writer, author of several books and research papers on international affairs. He is the former chairman of the Counterterrorism Committee of the United Nations Security Council. Despite his achievements, he remains accessible, affable, willing to go out of his way to make the right things happen. We've seen this at close quarters. Our speakers also have talked about how he's made things happen in real estate. So it's now my great privilege to request Mr. Hardeep Singh Puri to release the RERA report and to address us. Puri?
I have, can you hear me? I have this very comprehensive and excellent analysis and report with wonderful recommendations, 20 of them. I was talking to my colleague here whilst the first speaker was mentioning the recommendations, and I was asking him, can we get this database going quickly? So he said, yes, we link all the state databases and then we will try and see what we can do by the central government. So thank you very much. I feel very privileged to be here with you today in this important function. Thank you, Sucheta ji.
Fantastic.
Thank you. Well, let me start, first of all, by acknowledging and expressing my gratitude for this very distinguished participation, Shri Deepak Parekh ji, Gautam Chatterjee ji, Sucheta Dalal ji, Devashish Basu ji, chairpersons and members of RERA, appellate tribunals and regulatory authorities, home buyers, consumers, developers, real estate agents, representatives of banks and financial institutions, representatives of other regulatory bodies, research team from the Moneylife Foundation, ladies and gentlemen. Let me at the outset express my appreciation to both the Moneylife Foundation and HDFC for this effort in coming out with a report reviewing in particular the efficacy of Real Estate Act RERA from a consumer perspective, and also for thanking, I also want to thank you for inviting me to this release function. For those of you who have had to listen to me on earlier occasions on RERA, let me, even at risk of being repetitive, say that I have always wondered, I have been bewildered how a sector as important as real estate, which no matter which way you analyze the economy, in terms of activity, in terms of employment, in terms of the future, I liked in particular what Mr. Parekh said, as India builds, India will grow. I think that sums it up. And I've always maintained, how is it for so many years as an independent country, we did not have a regulator in this section? Now, I want to fast forward a bit. I came on the scene only in September 2017, and RERA had been enacted by Parliament a few months earlier in March 2016, within a year and a half of the Modi government assuming office. And all I can tell you is that the facts speak for themselves. I'm not merely rejoicing in the success of Maharashtra RERA, but even if you look at the overall statistics, yes, Maharashtra has been in the lead. It has provided guidance, but others have followed. So we have, as the first speaker pointed out, 60,000 projects have been registered, 45,723 agents have been registered, 60,000 complaints have been redressed, disposed of as part of the dispute settlement machinery. 34 states and union territories have notified their rules. 30 states and union territories have set up regulatory authorities. 26 states and UTs have set up appellate tribunals. Now, by any yardstick, given the time that we have had this legislation on the book, journey has been difficult, and I'll come to that in a minute, but permit me to make one general comment about this sector. I'm particularly grateful to Sucheta ji when she mentioned the reverse mortgages report, to Mr. Parekh for mentioning rental housing as something we should work on. Sucheta ji also mentioned retirement homes. And I can tell you, I have, at least on the issue of the retirement homes, I take great pride because somebody had to apply their minds in an out-of-box manner on this sector, which otherwise does not gain. So we came up in the ministry, thanks to inputs provided by our friends who are participating today, with this report, Model Guidelines for Development and Regulation of Retirement Homes. This has gone to all the states because land is a state subject. I was telling my colleagues here who are joining me today, we must now find some way of not giving the impression that we are trying to intrude into the space of the state governments because land is a state subject, but find some way, maybe utilize the good offices of HDFC and others to tell them what can be done. I'm doing that in Delhi, but I'd like some state governments to take the lead, follow the template, the guidelines which have been provided, and then move forward so that a very important sector of our society, the senior citizens, also have a focused way of looking. Reverse mortgages is one part of it. Retirement homes is another. I'm just mentioning this in order to drive home the point that this is a sector where developments invariably take a little longer than others. But the good news is that we are on the right track and the direction is very, very positive. And I totally agree on rental housing. That's something my colleagues in my ministry spend a lot of time. We'd be very happy to partner with you. We'll also share with you some of the initiatives we are taking. I'm very proud that Maharashtra reduced stamp duty, but I've written to all the state governments. Some of the others have done it too. So when I meet my friends in Naretko and Kredai, they tell me they've had the best Diwali in a long time. I take that, I draw some strength from it, but I think we need to make that progress on a more sustainable basis. We need others to do it. And when Mr. Parekh says that interest rates are down, I am again encouraged because I've lived, I know most of you know, many years of my life outside. When I look at interest rates in other places, I think that's the direction to go in the housing sector in order to really make this an affordable product for so many people who are in our Pradhan Mantri Aviation Yojana is doing roaringly well. 1 crore 12 lakh target we've already done. I think 1 crore 9 lakh. We have 70 lakh units under construction. We've handed over about 40-50 lakhs. And no matter which way I look at it, the figures are good. Let me come back to RERA. Many of you may not remember because we look at the positive side of life. But when the real estate bill was introduced in the Rajya Sabha in 2013, there were stark differences between the bill that was introduced in 2013 and the bill which was finally introduced and enacted in 2016. For those of you who may not recall the differences, let me take the liberty of pointing out the significant differences between the two. The 2013 bill did not cover ongoing projects. It also did not cover commercial real estate. The threshold for registration was so high that most housing projects would have escaped coverage under the law. I'm talking about the 2013 law. These exclusions would have made RERA almost meaningless, providing mere lip service, very much like some of our Garibi Hatao campaigns, which we have conducted without actually being able to deliver for those who really need this kind of positive affirmative action coming from the state. After the formation of the Modi government in 2014, a holistic review was carried out along with multiple stakeholder discussions, and we included, as part of a conscious decision, ongoing projects and commercial projects. We also reduced the threshold for project registration through our official amendments in 2015. Later, we also referred the bill along with the official amendments to a select committee of the Rajya Sabha under the able chairmanship of the late Shri Anil Madhav Daveji, a former BJP MP from Madhya Pradesh. The committee traveled across the country, creating a conducive atmosphere in the spirit of cooperative federalism and suggested a more holistic bill for the sector. The bill went through several stages, and I'm not going to go into other details. All I can share with you is that I find it very difficult, but I've not succumbed to the temptation as yet. I tried to conceal the list of people who tried to sabotage this legislation. And they came from all over the place. They came saying that the legislation did not go far enough, that the legislation must be tweaked. And many of these ideas, many of these doubts found their way into the multiple challenges that the legislation invited, which the Honorable Supreme Court put together in one bundle and placed before the Honorable Mumbai High Court. And I think I had the privilege of, being around as minister when those challenges were being addressed. I had absolutely no doubt that our judiciary and the steadfast resoluteness of the Prime Minister, who overcame these objections, including, and I'm choosing my words very carefully, from within his own party, in order to be able to take this legislation forward. And there, even when this challenge was met, there were people who said, no, this will destroy the industry, this will not influence the the home buyers, this will not. And I always maintained, and through number of interactions with my friend Mr. Gautam Chatterjee, with the people in other states, including Mr. Desai in Madhya Pradesh, other places, I said, we should not get into this with a preconceived mindset and a myopic view. And the dispute resolution which has taken place under RERA has clearly demonstrated that it is not as, I think it was Shri Parekh who said, it is one-sided. And I think, Gautam, many people say a lot of nice things to you, but I think your name will always be remembered for having set the benchmark for the kind of objectivity which this sector deserves. And I'm an optimist by nature. I get trolled. Today I'm feeling in a very good mood because the Honorable Supreme Court has cleared my Central Vista project. And I tell you, we will deliver a world-class parliament befitting a new India, thanks to the Prime Minister, by the time we celebrate our 75th anniversary in 2022. So we keep getting challenges all over. But I think I draw strength when I see people like this participating, because we are going in the right direction. And RERA, believe me, is one of the most important pieces of legislation. I have always maintained that there is going to be, when you write the history of this period, there's going to be a pre-RERA period and a post-RERA period. Now, my speaking notes are very long. All I'm going to say, just take out one or two points. What did we do? An insight, let me share an insight on this RERA. While the bill was pending in Parliament, the Congress government in Maharashtra quickly enacted its own law in the Assembly and took presidential assent under Article 254 of the Constitution in February 2014, just 2 months prior to the 2014 general election. This effectively meant that in the state of Maharashtra, RERA would not have applied. Now, for me, I'm not wanting to put a political point on it. You called me more a civil servant than a politician, but this is a political game. At the end of the day, we have to navigate our way through political reality. I must say that at the very least, I am cynical, if not suspicious, that a government in Maharashtra approved a state bill on a subject on which it had its own central bill pending in Parliament. Now, I cannot, at least in the BJP, imagine that any of my colleagues who are chief ministers in state would bring a legislation in their state assembly when you have the ruling party submitting its own legislation in the central parliament. But that is what happened. I don't want to go into detail, but prior to the general elections, the UPA dangled an incomplete and incoherent law while clandestinely approving under section Article 254 of the Constitution its own party's bill in Maharashtra, which would have caused permanent damage to home buyers in Maharashtra. I'm very happy to tell you that we corrected this anomaly through our official amendments in 2015 by repealing the State Act via Section 92 of RERA. This was done by using the same Article 254 of the Constitution, which under the proviso provides for powers of repeal. Our battle for RERA did not end with its enactment in Parliament. I've already briefly touched on this next battle we had to fight in the Mumbai High Court. But again, I'm going to fast forward and say we were able to overcome that. And now let me tell you, going forward, we are committed to ensuring a progressive and thriving real estate sector with the consumer, the home buyer at the center of it all. And I am very happy to see that this report, which we have just released, has brought out the consumer-centric perspective in no uncertain manner. The report makes some very important recommendations, ranging from definitional issues to reconciliation between provision. The report also highlights how orders passed by regulatory authorities are not being implemented in some cases. I assure you that we will have all these thoroughly examined and take corrective measures as deemed necessary. One of the points I picked up, which is not in my prepared speaking notes, is that the 20 recommendations you showed, I think one of you said that data is gold. Well, I think if not gold, it may be even more valuable. But I think, let me say that from my ministry's point of view, we'll work with anyone, the state RERA authorities. Let's have a central database, which we have all the constituent segments, the states. We let all the stakeholders also have access to the database, because the maximum transparency that you can introduce, you will find that the sector will begin to benefit from that free flow of information. I would have liked to not include one particular state which decided to move on its own. All I can say is that this defiance of constitutional principles by that state government has been challenged before the Honorable Supreme Court through a public interest litigation, which has issued notice to that particular state government. The Union of India has already filed our affidavit in that matter. We are very confident, and I can say this on record, that that state government's legislation will be rendered unconstitutional by the Honorable Supreme Court. I have immense faith in our institutional machinery and sense of justice there, and that we will have a one nation, one RERA, thereby equally benefiting home buyers in all the states, including in that state where it has not been applied. The report also lists some states which have more than proactively implemented RERA. I would, through this forum, urge the other states to expeditiously complete all administrative requirements so that RERA is implemented both in letter and spirit across the country. RERA is a novel exercise in cooperative federalism. Though the act has been piloted by the central government, the rules are to be notified by the state government, and the regulatory authorities and appellate tribunal are also to be appointed by them. On the other hand, the regulatory authorities are required to manage the day-to-day operation, resolve disputes, including running an active and informative website for project information. All the wheels of this mammoth exercise in governance will have to work in harmony, which they are already doing, and to reap the dividends envisaged under RERA. And I want to just inject a personal note, again, not part of my speaking, that one of the things I used to be trolled on most when I had just become a minister were complaints. Then slowly, when the dispute resolution took place, when more and more projects got listed and registered, when more agents got registered, I find that the narrative has changed. We have had to take some separate action in the territories around Delhi, Noida, Greater Noida, Yamuna Expressway. That is also proceeding well. Left to myself, I would want instant resolution, but I am as much a product of the system as everyone else. So I know that the challenge lies in navigating on a constant basis forward, sometimes making allowance for the fact things happen a little less, a little slowly, and not as fast as one wanted to be. But I think we are doing very, very well, and RERA is clearly going to be the, how do I say, provide the coordinates for the not only the revival but the roaring success of the real estate sector. Let me conclude by again congratulating the lead author, Maya and her team, Moneylife Foundation and HDFC Limited for coming out with this timely report. My congratulations. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Puri. As always, a very, very engaging speech with a lot of talking points and dynamic action. I'm sure Mr. Pankaj Kapoor of Liaisons for Us will be very thrilled to hear that you have on the spot taken a decision about the central database. It's something that we have recommended. The recommendation came from him, and there's a lot of work already done on this. So I think it can get moving really fast. The second thing that you talked about is doing something on rentals. I wish rentals were affordable to many of us. There's a lot of work to be done because rents seem expensive from the consumer point of view. And as a percentage of the property, it's a pittance to the person who actually owns the house and wants to rent it. So this is an area where, with your support and encouragement and that of Mr. Deepak Parekh, we look forward to doing something on rentals because we're quite sure it's going to affect a lot of people, especially at a time when youngsters are moving from one state to another for jobs almost overnight. They can't keep buying places. They have to look for rental property. So that's a very, very well taken point. And the third point, as you said, RERA is a game changer. A lot of times, even when we were working on the report, consumers tend to think that if my grievance is not redressed, the act is useless, which is why we are at pains to try and tell them, look at the picture holistically. You did not even have information before. Today, you have several channels for grievance redress, and it's a work in progress. And finally, before thanking you for this wonderful speech and for being part of it today, I need to mention that Maharera has been a role model because someone like Mr. Chatterjee was around. We hope that his successor is going to be an equally dynamic and upright person because, to my mind, who is in the job makes as much of a difference, just as the fact that you in the job as housing minister is making a big difference to this sector. It is the same with the regulators. I thank you again for so graciously being part of this program, releasing the report, to Mr. Deepak Parekh and Mr. Gautam Chatterjee for sharing their thoughts. We're going to have a discussion now for some time, but I do understand Mr. Puri, that you have several pressing engagements. I hope you're going to stay with us for a little while for the discussion, but I do understand that you may have to drop off because you have some prior commitments. And with this, I'm going to request my colleague Arvind to unmute Mr. Kapoor so that he's able to react to what the minister has said as the first discussant in this session. Pankaj Kapoor.
Pankaj sir, I've just given you a request to unmute. So can you please unmute yourself?
Ask Mr. Pranay Vakil until he comes on.
Yeah, yes, ma'am.
Mr. Vakil?
You want me to take over? Yeah. Sucheta, excellent. I think all the information that we have got, all the dialogues that we've heard are really, really excellent, and it has laid the future path for RERA. There are only one thing which bothers me. If you were to look at the real estate industry, and one major problem that the real estate industry has been black money. And RERA, as such, does not address that issue at all. So maybe as a group, we should discuss whether RERA can be tweaked to address this major issue of black money. I know the ready reckoners are there, but you know, ready reckoners have not always worked to control the flow of black money. In variety of ways. So I think this is one point I'd like to raise and maybe throw it open for discussion. The second point is the ready reckoner rates. They've become a little outdated. There are a number of transactions that are happening much below the ready reckoner rate. And I know that the 20% thing will apply up to 2 crores of rupees, but number of larger transactions are also getting hit by the Income Tax Act because of the ready reckoner that has not been revised downwards. These are the 2 points I'd like to make. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Vakil. We have Mr. Kapoor back on. Arvind, will you ask Mr. Kapoor to unmute?
Yes, I unmuted him. I have unmuted him. He should be able to speak right now.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you, Sucheta Di, Mr. Puri, Mr. Parekh, Mr. Chatterjee, and everyone, and allowing me to speak up. I've been involved with the RERA, and I remember, my first presentation I made in 2012 at Moneylife's forum in, when they spoke about the RERA, and I never expected such kind of an act to get passed. The way the real estate industry used to behave earlier, because it was like an industry where the saying was that any irregularity can be get regularized. So, in such aspects, the way the things have changed is quite a lot. And I have been involved with the RERA at a CVC level also. Something I have liked the way the RERA has got implemented, but the few things I still, as a personal experience, I'm noticing is that I recently went ahead to think about upgrading my house, and because the stamp duty was lower, and I thought about it's a good opportune time to purchase the property. I looked upon one of these property, and I asked the person, the developer, to share his layout and detail. And he said that the property's RERA carpet is close to 1,200 square feet. Then I sat down and I calculated every dimension, and I realized that the actual carpet and RERA carpet has a huge difference. The way he was calculating was absolutely wrong. And then, one thing was, I was wondering that one can calculate the carpet in the old method by taking a measuring tape and then look at the area which is covered under in the carpet. But in the RERA carpet, there is the additional area of the wall, internal wall, which has been included. And it is very ambiguous. So when I asked these brokers to send me the calculation of the overall area, he gave me first all these dimensions and calculated, and he said that and he added 5% to it, 4% to it, and said that is a total RERA carpet. When I found the mistakes in the calculation, he recalculated the carpet area and added 5%. Then I did not really understand why the difference of 4% became 5% and the RERA carpet turned out to be 12%. This is ambiguous. My own sense, the basic premises for the RERA was to bring in the transparency. A consumer can stand and count the area which is buying, because 1% and 2% difference really translate into very huge size of the difference in the property prices. Something like this. So I liked everything about the RERA. I still do not understand what was the reasoning of including RERA carpet as a different unit than carpet area, which was well established fact, could have done better. And this is where the ambiguity which is there. And my own sense is I am expecting Mr. Chatterjee to ask these developers to start giving either dimensions of the walls so that one can calculate what is the actual carpet, additional area, and the calculation can be done. Otherwise, there is a scope of ambiguity, and this is being exploited by many developers.
Interesting point, Mr. Kapoor. I thought you would be more interested in talking about the central database that you had proposed, which the minister has said that they're going to go ahead and implement. I think we're going to Mr. Ramani next. Arvind?
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Ramani, can you please unmute yourself? I've given you the permission to unmute. Yeah, I think he's unmuted.
I would prefer to listen.
Hello. So did you say something? I missed your voice.
I would prefer to listen. I'm frankly, personally, very much satisfied with the progress of RERA in the whole country. We could not imagine that such a legislation, same uniform legislation can be implemented in the whole country, and it has become reality. And the progress is there. There are certain complaints. We have to wait and watch. Gradually, things will definitely improve. And we'll have one country, one RERA. Absolutely the satisfying idea.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ramani. Just for our audience, Mr. Ramani handles the legal work, and he's one of the best known legal minds in the country, especially on real estate, and this is high praise coming from him. Our next speaker.
Anil Harish sir, can you please unmute? I've just sent you a request to unmute yourself. No, I think he's not got my listing meetings. Mr. Harish is not here.
So who else? The hand raised, I can't see them, Arvind.
I think nobody's raised their hand right now. So I think Mr. Harish, unfortunately, is dropped off, it seems. There is a Mr. Oh, okay, sir. Okay.
So,
ma'am, Mr. Anil Harish has unmuted himself.
Okay, great.
Sucheta, congratulations on having this program. It's very interesting, and it was very interesting to hear also the Honorable, and you have such a galaxy of stars on this. I think RERA has been absolutely remarkable. The way Chatterjee has put and so it has over energy, and it has really been a game changer. I'm extremely happy with RERA. There are some issues, and those are really relating to the transition. People who had entered into agreements before RERA came into effect on 1st May 2017, and there have been some specific cases where the developer has not even registered under RERA but has not handed over possession for the old matters. So there are some issues like that, not in relation primarily to the functioning of RERA, but to the non-functioning of RERA in those situations. And we do need to address those issues. I had discussed these with Maya, and she's talked about them in the report as well. But some aspects do need to be considered, perhaps from a different point of view. But it has been outstanding. I think in this pandemic time, another aspect, not directly RERA, but relating to real estate, the fact that the Maharashtra government has done something incredible. This is what we really wanted, that they should reduce the stamp duty to give an incentive, which they have done up to 31st December and then 31st March. And this is what I had hoped that the central government would also do when the lockdown took place and everything slowed down. I always felt that they should give and forgive, that they should give cities, etc., to people, and they should forgive some collection which they could get, which they have not done. The Maharashtra government has done that they have forgiven 3% or 2% stamp duty, as the case may be. And I wish that the central government would have done that for GST, because people who are buying flats and buildings under construction really are suffering on account if they have to pay 5% or 1% GST, depending on the size of the flat. But on the whole, I think things are good. And the Maharashtra government at least seems to be very proactive when they talk about reducing of cost of premiums, etc.
Thank you so much, Mr. Harish. I think they're very interesting points. And I know that Mr. Chatterjee said earlier that he's already on leave and intends to give up office. But Mr. Chatterjee, would you like to react to some of the comments that have been made so far? You're on mute, Mr. Chatterjee.
Yeah. Coming to Mr. Kapoor's point, I think the Central Act defined what would be a carpet area. What Maharera did was they tried to of carpet area and put it in unit as has been defined in the Central Act is what has been put out in the public domain. Now, if there are deficiencies in that, because there are many areas which have been included in the said carpet area, as Pankaj mentioned, of internal walls, there are many areas, especially in areas of Mumbai and Thane, where there are these cantilever extensions, which ultimately gets subsumed in the living room and becomes as good as the living room. But as per definition in the Central Act, it is not included in the carpet area, but very much a carpet area as far as the local development control regulations are concerned. And therefore, this is another aspect, along with many other aspects that need to be amended in the Central Act. And I'm sure that will be looked at when the other amendments are being looked at.
Also, the points of Mr. Anil Harish, would you want to comment on that?
No, Anil Harish is right. I also mentioned, if you have if you recall, I mentioned that the 13,000 complaints that have been filed with Maharera are pertaining to close to 10 to 12% of the total registered projects, all right. But 94% of the said complaints are of pre-RERA era, which are from all projects which have been started prior to RERA Act coming in. However, as ongoing projects, they have been brought under the ambit of RERA. There is only 6% of these 13,000 which pertain to after a project has been launched after RERA has come in. And these are also not regarding there is delay in construction. They are regarding that the agreement may not be in the right format and things like that, or the booking amount has been forfeited wrongly. This is only 5-6%. So as I mentioned, that we are still in that going through the pain of transition from the pre-RERA era to the post-RERA era. I had thought 3 years would be time enough for us to get over this pain. But then, however, this pain has gone elongated. As I mentioned, only 50% of the old projects have still not completed. The other 50% has taken extension to get it completed. We all look forward to completion of the project. And I feel the purpose for which RERA has been brought in to see that the projects get completed so that the allottees get their completed homes. So we will work towards that. Thank you.
Absolutely fantastic. Mr. Parekh, would you like to react to some of the comments? Because these are all industry leaders who are talking just now. Some problems with technology, but Arvind.
No, I'm there.
Yeah.
I'm there. No,
Okay.
I've been listening to these comments. I think the key thing, Suchita, is that follow up to this discussion with the Honorable Minister, we must ensure that the recommendations that you have made are taken in and pushed through. Be a different RERA if all those recommendations. And in your report, you've also mentioned the staggered states, the states that have not been who have temporary heads of RERA heads. I think we need to get the minister himself to talk to some states, chief minister to fill that position. And you know, earlier when ULC was scrapped, ULC again, the center scrapped it, but many states did not scrap it. Then the central government followed carrot and stick approach. They did not release funds to the state for urban development until the state scrapped the ULC. So I think we need to tell the government of the country that you must have that carrot and stick approach so far as funds under Prime Minister Awas Yojana or any other central government schemes which go to the state, urban development, they should put some restrictions if the state doesn't comply. Because we need every state to be at Maharashtra level to make this a success. I think some of the points, black money and all, I know there is black money in certain schemes, but according to me, about 70-80% projects across the country, there is no black money, Pranay. Maybe in some parts of the country there is, but you can get flats anywhere in the country without paying a single black money, a single rupee as black money. maybe in a second recent think there is black money. For new projects, there are hardly a few projects where I see there is black money.
Excellent. I think that's a good point. We will, of course, relentlessly have to keep following up on our reports. Luckily, the minister is interested, so we're very hopeful because we've seen the wonderful work that happened on retirement homes. And we definitely take your point that we will keep at it and see if we can make progress on making a few of these things happen. Advocate Manoj, would you want to say something?
Harit sir, can you please unmute yourself? I've just requested you to unmute.
5 minutes. Last question. No?
No, I think he's not. I think he's not unmuted.
Yes.
So I think
were you addressing me or?
No, we were asking whether Advocate Manoj Harit wants to say something, but we are unable to reach him. I think technology is an issue. I think we've had a wonderful session, and the discussion is more on RERA, and we've been telling people who attended that this is not about individual complaints. There are lots of people who feel that things haven't moved fast enough, others haven't been implemented. We have a lot of messages that we have received. There is one particular project. Oh, Mr. Harit is back. So, Mr. Harit, would you like to say something?
Oh, surely. I would first like to say a few words about the way Chatterjee sir has handled and established the RERA Act, at least in Maharashtra. I mean, his approach has always been consultative, and he has seen to it that tangible deliverables are had by the complainants. So I would really like to congratulate sir that it has been a wonderful experience appearing before me. Even if we are from the side of the builders, sir has never been. I mean, the process, the act was made to grant some relief to the home buyers, and at least as far as the Maharashtra Maharera is concerned, that job has been done really well. That's one part. And second, a lot of things are being spoken, and I do endorse that. Like this was a legislation which was needed. This is something, and a lot needs to be done, and the authorities are really doing it. So that's all I want to say.
Thank you so much. With this, we bring this wonderful program to an end. Thank you again, Mr. Chatterjee, Mr. Deepak Parekh, Mr. Anil Harish, Mr. Harit, Mr. Pankaj Kapoor, Sunil Bajaj, and so many of you, Mr. Aviation. Your help has been immense in getting a good report out, and we again request all your help in pushing it forward, because there's no point in a report if things that we suggest don't get implemented. So we will be looking to you for support and help all over again. Thank you so much.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you.